Have you ever found the perfect apartment? Great location, reasonable rent, everything you've been looking for? I did. And for 3 weeks, it felt like I'd finally gotten lucky for once in my life. Then I started hearing the footsteps. This happened 8 months ago, and I still check every apartment listing twice before I even consider viewing it. My name is Emma, and I've been apartment hunting in the city for months. Everything was either too expensive or too sketchy, and I was getting desperate. Then I found this little place on Craigslist. A cozy 1-bedroom with an attic for storage, perfect location, and the rent was actually reasonable. The landlord, Mrs. Patterson, was this sweet older woman who seemed genuinely happy to have a quiet tenant. She showed me around the place, and it was exactly what I'd been hoping for. Hardwood floors, big windows. It even came partially furnished with some basic pieces. The previous tenant left in quite a hurry, she explained, pointing to an old wooden rocking chair in the corner. Left some furniture behind. You're welcome to keep whatever you want and put the rest in the attic. The attic access was a narrow pull-down ladder in the hallway ceiling. Mrs. Patterson showed me how to use it, and we went up to take a quick look. It was a decent-sized space with a small window at one end and exposed wooden beams. Perfect for storage. Her son helped me move most of the previous tenant's leftover items up there that same day, including that old rocking chair, which was way too heavy for me to manage alone. I signed the lease immediately. For the first 3 weeks, everything was perfect. Quiet neighbors, plenty of sunlight, a warm, safe feeling. I finally felt settled. Then on a Tuesday night in my 4th week, I heard it for the first time. I was lying in bed, maybe around 2 a.m. when I thought I heard something from above. Soft sounds like someone moving around in the attic. But I was groggy and half asleep, so I wasn't sure if it was real or just part of a dream. Over the next several nights, it happened again. I'd wake up at different times, 1 a.m., 3:30, just before dawn, with the uneasy feeling I'd heard slow, deliberate footsteps above me, always in that same muffled, careful rhythm. At first, I tried to brush it off. Old building, wood expands and contracts, maybe mice or even a raccoon had gotten in. But by the end of my first full week of hearing them, the sounds were clearer, heavier. I could picture weight shifting on the old floorboards, footsteps tracing a path from one end of the attic to the other. One night I got up to use the bathroom and heard them directly overhead as I walked down the hallway. No mistaking it, slow steps that stopped only after I froze mid-stride. The second week of hearing the noises, things got worse. The footsteps were joined by the long, slow creak of shifting weight and sometimes a rhythmic sound. Faint but steady, like a rocking chair moving back and forth. I would lie awake staring at the ceiling, imagining that chair just a few feet above my head. Rocking in the darkness, earplugs didn't help. The footsteps seemed to cut straight through them, deliberate and unhurried. My work started to suffer. I was exhausted, irritable, jumping at every noise. I Googled things like mice in attic footsteps and house settling at night, but I knew these weren't mice. On Friday night, I decided I'd had enough. I went to the hardware store after work and bought a heavy-duty flashlight. That night, I lay in bed waiting. At 1:30 a.m., the familiar steps began again. Unhurried, measured, pacing above me. This time I was ready. I got out of bed, went to the kitchen, and took a large knife from the counter. My hands were sweating, but I felt like I needed something, anything to protect myself. I walked quietly into the hallway. The footsteps continued. I reached up and pulled down the attic ladder. It creaked loudly in the stillness. The footsteps stopped. I climbed slowly, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. When my head cleared the attic floor, I switched on the flashlight and swept the beam across the space. At first, everything looked the same, then I saw it. The old rocking chair was in the center of the attic, not tucked in the corner where we left it when I moved in. It was moving just slightly, as though someone had just stood up from it. A faint creak sounded with each slow rock. Then I noticed a small window at the far end. It was wide open. Thin curtains I didn't remember seeing before were blowing in the night air, their shadows sliding across the walls. Cold air rushed in, and suddenly I understood why my apartment had felt so drafty lately. I stood frozen, trying to piece it together. That's when I heard it, a soft thud from outside near the back of the house. I turned turned off the flashlight and crept toward the window. Peering out, I saw it. A ladder leaning against the wall, reaching right up to the attic window. Someone had been climbing into my attic from outside. For weeks, I bolted. I barely touched the attic ladder on the way down, stumbling into the hallway, scraping my arm, then sprinting out the door in my pajamas. Outside, I saw a figure in the dim street light walking on the opposite side of the road. "Help!" I shouted. The figure came closer, a handsome man in his 40s maybe. I stuttered. "I need to call 911. Can I borrow your phone? I left mine inside and I'm not going back in." He looked bewildered, nodded, and handed me his phone. I called 911, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. The police arrived within 10 minutes. They searched every corner of the attic and apartment but found no one. The ladder was still outside, old wooden. Definitely not Mrs. Patterson's. They took fingerprints and photos but never found who it belonged to. One officer said it might have been a homeless person looking for shelter, or someone casing the place for a burglary. "Good thing you called when you did," he said. I stayed in a hotel for the next 3 nights while the police investigated. Mrs. Patterson was horrified and offered to add better locks, cameras, whatever I needed. But I couldn't shake the thought of someone sitting in the attic just above my bed. I moved out before the month was over. 6 months later, I saw a headline online. "Woman reports intruder. Living in apartment attic for months." She lived 4 blocks from my old place. She'd been hearing footsteps for weeks before she checked, and when police searched her attic, they found blankets, food containers, signs someone had been living there. The intruder was never caught. I drive past my old apartment sometimes. That little attic window has bars on it now. Mrs. Patterson rented the place to a college student a couple of months after I left. I looked her up on social media once. She seemed happy. One of her posts showed the living room, with that old rocking chair back in its original corner where the previous tenant left it. I hope she's a heavy sleeper. If you live alone and start hearing sounds above you at night, don't wait weeks to investigate and make sure no window or access point could be reached from outside. Some footsteps aren't made by ghosts, and sometimes that's much worse.